Mothers have had their spotlight and celebration. Now it's time for dads to shine. Too often in our society, our dads are mocked or torn down. This is why I decided to also do a fatherhood series as a chance to champion, celebrate, challenge, and maybe even encourage our dads out there. They need it too. And hey, maybe we all learned something about parenting and God too. In today's episode, we'll be talking with my friend, Spencer Hutchinson.
Hey guys.
I met Spencer and his family in a small group social, or maybe it was Sunday school. It's just been a minute. But I do know that it was after Caleb and I had gotten married and we had quote unquote graduated up to the young married class. So it was at least 4 years ago. But Spencer, he is a communications manager for Lumen. But his cooler, non-paying job is a Sunday school / life group teacher to the young families class that we're now all in. And he does a great job, guys. So how did you come into that role, like being that Sunday school teacher?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago now, we had some transition in that class. And so we had a couple folks who were teaching the class who were older, and they moved up and started their own class that was kind of in the next age range. And so there was kind of this gap of we needed some teachers. And at that time, we had a minister there, Nathan Newfang, who was really pouring into me at the time and really challenged me and was like, hey man, you need to be teaching. Like, you have a lot of things that you can share with other people. Yeah. And so when that opportunity came up and there was kind of a need for teaching for our class, I embraced the opportunity and stepped into it. And it's
You're like, yeah, let me try it out.
Yeah, it's been great. I love teaching. I love preparing too. Like I'm a very studious person. And so I'm constantly like reading and studying up on things that interest me. And luckily one of those things is the Bible itself. Yeah. And so when I'm like preparing for a Sunday school lesson, for a life group lesson, I'm that kind of life group leader that's doing hours and hours of study on the back end, because I get sucked into some sort of rabbit hole that I'm looking at, commentaries that I'm looking at or whatever. So it has been really good for my interests, but also really good for me spiritually. Yeah.
So I guess you like it a little bit.
I do. Yeah. It's fun.
It's great. Yeah. Okay. What keeps you motivated to keep doing it? Like, you just because you want to learn more, you just want to keep sharing it with everybody?
Well, I get some personal enjoyment out of it. Like I said, it ticks a lot of boxes in terms of my interests. But also I just love our group, our life group itself. I want to see it continue. I want to see, those people that I care about. I want to see them grow in their relationship with Christ. And so just teaching every week and getting up there and leading discussions, I just really love other people's perspective and hearing from these people that play a big role in my life, hearing from them as to like how we can all live our lives together and do life together and pursue Christ together. Yeah.
And I think we have a great life group too. I mean, I'm in it, so I guess I can have to say that, but actually, well, I don't. We have got some good people in there and that are committed and bring a lot to the table.
It's really great.
So, yeah. All right. Well, we're going to stop with that because that could be a whole other conversation. And what everyone is really here for is to hear about you and your dad's skills. So tell us, how many children do you have and what are their ages?
I have 2 girls. I have Leah is my oldest. She's 3. And Caroline is my youngest, and she's 11 months old now.
Oh, man. Sweet girls. The girl dad.
Yep. I'm a girl dad. I love being a girl dad. Being a girl dad is awesome.
Cool. What makes it awesome? Like, what do you like about being a girl dad?
Well, girls are, I think girls are a little less destructive for one, but they
just wait.
Maybe we're just at the wrong life stage, but like my oldest Leah, she is so full of energy, but it's like emotional energy. Like everything is the greatest thing ever. And she's got a lot of physical energy too, but I just love her energy and her life right now as a 3-year-old. And I see that just starting to come out in my 11-month-old as well. Oh, okay. So yeah, I just love that about girls.
Yeah, that's fun. So was fatherhood in general something that you always look forward to?
Yeah, definitely. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a dad. Maybe boring, but the bachelor life never really appealed to me. Yeah. Even from middle school, I knew that I was going to settle down pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, I married my high school sweetheart. So,
okay. I didn't know y'all dated in high school.
We did. Yeah. We were dating in high school and then went to college at the same university. And so, and then got married right after we graduated from college. So yeah, it was always something that was a goal of mine. I knew from early on that I wanted to be a dad and wanted to start a family. Yeah.
Well, awesome. That's really good for Rachel, because that doesn't always happen. So that's pretty awesome that was already on your radar and stuff. I think it's a little refreshing to hear that. Yeah. So before you were a dad, what did you think it would be like?
Yeah, so I wasn't so naive to think that it wouldn't be difficult. I always knew that it would be difficult, but I also expected there to be so much joy around it. And there is. In my head, I pictured those milestone moments, those first steps, playing for sports teams, graduation, weddings, whatever. And I pictured all those things, and I don't think that actually having kids changed that in any ways. Those milestones are still so great, but I probably underestimated the time in between those milestones and how difficult that those times are. I mean, being a parent is difficult on a day-to-day basis. It's a struggle, and there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of negativity that happens in between those milestone moments, but those milestone moments are really great. And what we see with those other ones
make it worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Those other moments, they all kind of blur together.
Yeah. And that's a really great way to put that. Almost poetic, Spencer. But yeah, I have to agree. And I think also I just like how you put that time in between it. Because, a milestone moment doesn't happen every day. I think, it does when they're 2, 3, and 4 months. But after that, it's kind of it might
they start to stretch out.
Yeah, and just acknowledging that and seeing that, but also knowing, it's worth it, 100%. So that's great. But so what are some of those non-fun moments for you? For you as a dad, what does that look like? Yeah,
so being a parent is I always say, it's like living your life in a constant state of extremes. So the highs are so high because you love these little creatures so much, and
creatures,
and you just can't imagine your life without them. But that also makes the lows so low. And so, your fuse is shorter, your disappointment is increased, your anger burns a little hotter. Those moments are the least fun for sure, is when, my ugly side comes out, and when I fall short as a parent, or I feel that I've fallen short as a parent. Kids are nasty and dirty and stinky sometimes, but that's not even what that's not even what bothers me. That stuff doesn't bother you, and that's a lot of what people warn you about before you have kids, is that they're messy and they're stinky and you have to change diapers, and that stuff doesn't matter. The stuff that sticks with me are the times that I feel like I've let my kids down because of the way I behaved, or the way that I lost control of my emotions, or whatever. And I think that's important to realize for parents, is that you're capable of that, and that will, not that just that you're capable, but it will come out. Parenting is hard, and so it will pull that out of you.
Yeah. I feel that 110%. My child, he's only not even 18 months old. So not with him respectively, but, I've taught many children for several years, and, in a classroom setting, and that classroom kind of becomes like your own little family. And and it's so disappointing in yourself when you know that, oh my goodness, I got that upset today over that.
Right.
And it's the fact that you got so upset over that. And that is usually something super small. And to know that, man, yeah, that moment wasn't a great moment for that child, but it certainly wasn't a great moment for me. And I made it worse.
Right.
And I've had a few moments where I had to go back to my class or just even specific kids saying like, apologize. And so like, hey, like I didn't handle that right, you know?
Yeah. That raises a good point. Like that's really important to Rachel and I, is like when we mess up, it is important to model to our children what the proper response to someone messing up is, that we admit that we can mess up and that we apologize to them. Yeah. So that's really important. That's good.
So, on that, that same vein of thought here. So how do you and Rachel like approach, discipline?
All right. So I should start here by saying that I'm nowhere near perfect, and we are not perfect, and we don't pretend to be, but discipline dominates like so much of your brain power as a parent that it's kind of crazy. But I can only tell you like what we believe and what we put into practice. And so, or try to put into practice. So we like to give our kids a lot of space and grace. So some would probably say that we give our kids too much grace, and that's okay. We just feel like children are not given enough credit, and that they are capable of much more than what we think that they are. And we're big believers that children are people too, and that we should treat our children like people. And so when it comes to discipline, we like to set our boundaries pretty wide and really stick those boundaries to their physical safety and how they treat others, and what they do in between those two boundaries is for them to discover and give them the space to make mistakes, and give them the space to discover who they are naturally within those boundaries. Now, what happens when they step outside of those boundaries is where it gets difficult, right? Because they constantly want to test those boundaries of physical danger or how they treat other people. They want to treat other people poorly. They don't want to share. They don't want to, respect other people's physical space. Yeah. And so that gets difficult with children, and that's where it's hard. But what we do in those situations is we will sometimes physically remove our kid from the situation, or physically remove whatever is tempting them.
That they're struggling with.
Yeah. And so that's what we do. And then only if those things are not working, then do you go to some sort of alternate measure. But that's very rare. And again, we like to lead with grace and allow them to make mistakes within, as long as they're not going to be physically harmed doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, or someone else. Yeah.
Right.
Man, exactly. I love that. And I just love how this idea of like treating your kids with respect. Like, I mean, that sounds so simple and almost like duh. But at the same time, I feel like, I don't know, we don't really do that a whole bunch as a society. I think for a long time there, it's been like, well, we're the adults, you're the kids, period.
Right.
And to some respect, there's still a little bit of that there, but it's not such the focus, and that's not what I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing like more like we're just giving them, acknowledging that about them and giving them that respect, and I really like this idea of casting a wide boundary. Like, can you give us a little bit of an example on that? Like, what does it look like? Like, can you give a scenario of what casting a wide boundary looks like?
So I can, the one that sticks out in my head is my 3-year-old Leah is learning to ride the bike, ride her bike. And she has this little bike without pedals right now. So it's just a balance bike. She pushes on it, and then she can just kind of glide on it down the driveway. And Rachel and I saw our role in this of like, you take something as simple as riding a bike. Like ultimately we wanted her to discover it for herself. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but we want to make that a safe environment for her to do that. And so for us, the boundaries were, we will provide the helmet and the knee pads and the elbow pads, and if you're going to ride your bike, you have to be wearing them, right?
Yeah.
Because that protects your physical safety.
Yeah.
And even when you ride your bike, you've got to stay on the driveway, and so you can't go into the street because that protects your physical safety.
Yeah.
And then, you also cannot ride over your 11-month-old sister, right? in the bike. So you have to kind of keep some distance from your sister when you're riding your bike, because that protects her physical safety. And so we create these boundaries, but then whatever she does on her bike, inside of those boundaries is for her to discover, right?
Yeah.
So she doesn't necessarily wear her knee pads correct all the time, but she's got them on, right?
Yeah.
And she's figuring it out, and she doesn't always ride her bike in the way that I would, right? But we don't step in and say, no, this is the way you ride your bike.
You show how to do that, Willie.
Right. She gets to discover that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we will step in and we may make a suggestion, but if she can take it or not, and it's never a hey, this is how you ride a bike. This is it. That's for her to discover within the safe environment that we've created.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Do you ever feel that this is how, God fathers us?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's an aspect of God definitely that is definitely, do this because it's what I've said.
Yeah.
But at the same time, God is perfect, right? And so he has the ability to say that, whereas like it's important for me as a dad to admit that I'm not perfect and I don't have all the answers. And so, but we see that with God, that he leads with grace all the time. I mean, you can look at the Israelites and week by week, they can't make up their mind whether or not they want to follow God. And they're constantly making mistakes. And God constantly gives them a way back. The boundaries are always there. The boundaries are always consistent, because that's something that is part of God's character, is that he's always the same. He's always consistent. But within that, he allows people to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and come back to him as a loving father. And so, definitely we see that.
Yeah, that's great. It's beautiful, actually. I don't know. Thanks. You gave me a lot of imagery there, Spencer. Is there anything you feel like you could be better at?
Patience.
Yeah.
It's always patient. Yeah, it's always patience. I mentioned this earlier, but the times I feel like I failed the most as a father are just whenever there is limited time and I am pushing my kids too hard, or I'm losing my temper or something else along those lines. And so being a parent is a constant battle and there's only so much time in the day, and those two mixed together causes a lot of anxiety and stress. I mean, you know it. It is really difficult.
Yeah, and for me, because I get that way too. In some ways, I'm kind of short fused, or maybe it's just the perfect storm of it that makes me short fused. I don't know. But that's when I'm like, I'm thankful that I do have my husband there to like tap out. Like, okay, you take over. So that's my out for me, or my help for me in that. It was like, Caleb, can't just in this moment where I'll be detrimental to the situation. So
I think that's really important as parents, is to know that point with your spouse of like, oh, okay, they've reached that point. I need to step in here.
Yeah. So how do you define being a good dad?
So I would define it as safety. Safety is the word that comes to mind. I want our kids to feel safe in our home. I want them to feel safe around me. I want them to feel safe in their interactions with others, safe to share their emotions with me, safe to explore and learn and become themselves. And so you could go on, but I feel like it's my role as their dad to create that safe environment, similar to how we were talking about the bicycle. My role as the dad is to create that safe environment for them. And then everything that happens in between them is up to them.
Yeah, man, I really like that. I feel like it's a unique response, but I love it. I think it's a great response, just because it's not just about a physical safety. I mean, that's part of it,
right,
for sure. But it's the other parts of it, and that's the part that I feel like not everyone would think about.
Right.
And so I love that you and Rachel both are like making that a priority for your kids. I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, and that's important for me as a dad. I mean, that is countercultural. I mean, that there's so many jokes about how people don't have deep conversations with their dad. They don't have emotional.
They don't cry.
Right. They don't have an emotional connection with their dad. Right. Or that their dad just doesn't. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And so it's important for me as their dad for them to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally as well, that they can come talk to me and that I want to talk to them and that I care about their opinions on what I'm doing and the life that I'm living. And I think so many men do not welcome that from their children. And that I think there's elements of that they could really benefit from if they opened themselves up to that.
That's great. I agree. I really admire that. I think that's awesome. You know, and that makes me think a little bit about my son. You know, I remember looking at him when he was like really small, like 2 and 3 months old, like really fresh with me. Like, and I thought, like, you know, if I had a daughter, I just don't think my role would be the same. I think I would mother differently if he happened to be a girl. Because, you know, I think because I am a woman and I know what this life here is like as a woman, if I had a daughter, I'd be like, oh, I have to make her strong and I can show her that. And with that, you know, it's be more like we have to be tough a little bit. But for my son, and that's what I do have as a son, I'm more about protective in the sense of protecting his vulnerability. I want him to remain vulnerable and soft and feel that same kind of safety with that and that it's okay for that. And that's what I feel protective of for him in that. So like, I get that a little bit, especially like that safetyness of being vulnerable and being, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have daughters. What if you happen to have sons? Would you, view your role with them any differently? Do you think you would parent differently?
Yeah. So I think our roles as parents come to us kind of naturally, and there's some natural difference between the way we parent girls and the way we parent boys, and I think that that's okay. I would hope that the sort of parenting style that we've implemented wouldn't change, though.
Yeah.
But I think that Rachel and I's role within that environment would naturally be different, right? Because a boy is going to naturally have a different relationship with his mom than his dad, than my daughter's. Their relationship with their dad and their mom. And I think that those differences are okay and natural. And the reason why we have, a mother and a father in the relationship.
Yeah. So I agree with that. I like that a lot. So what do you think God expects from fathers?
I think it can be mostly boiled down to he expects us to lead, but I think that is a landmine, and so many people have misunderstood what God means by leading your family. And the way I look at it is God hasn't called us to be some sort of tyrant that's like lording over our family.
Ooh, thank goodness.
Yeah. But like when I read the Bible, God has essentially called fathers to the highest standard of spiritual and emotional responsibility that there is. He's called everyone to be like him, obey him, make disciples, these things that he's commanded us to do. But, then in Timothy 1, he makes even more demands of fathers. And I don't have this memorized, but I'm going to read it. Okay. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? And that's 1 Timothy 3:2-5. Yeah. So
heavy stuff there.
It's tough. And when I read that and when I think about leading my family, I'm supposed to be model to them. And if I'm not being a model in how, in my finances, in my decision making, in my slowness to anger, in my love for others, if I'm not doing that for them, then I have no right to lead them. And they have every right to not listen to me whenever I make suggestions. And so it's a really high standard that I think God has called fathers to. And I think if you're not living up to that really high standard, which no one can, but it's the goal, right?
That's the goal.
But if you're not keeping that as your standard, then you have no right to be the tyrant lording over your family.
Yeah, your kids. Yeah, just living beyond that reproach. I think that in itself is like having that as a goal is something that, man, can keep you at least striving for the right thing. You know, when you have that in your mind of like, man, I have to live beyond reproach. Like someone can't come call me out for whatever because I'm living to that standard. And also like just how it says like in 1 Timothy there about, you know, you're not violent but gentle, you know, and hospitable.
Right.
How like it said that of this leader, this male leader, and how many men are described as hospitable, you know,
or gentle,
Yeah. And the fact that that's in there, I think that's awesome. I just have to say this. I know that Spencer happens to be a really great Marvel enthusiast. So, I mean, I have to put this reference in here because, like, doesn't Spider-Man say it could be? I don't even know if it is Spider-Man, to be honest. But doesn't he say with great power comes great responsibility? Or is it backwards?
It's not. It's actually not Spider-Man's Uncle Ben.
Oh my gosh!
But it is from the Spider-Man.
But it's the movie. All right, I get 2 points. Okay.
Yeah. It's his Uncle Ben that says it.
That says it. Okay. Yeah. But it's still along the same thought, you know, that it is a great responsibility that are put on, you know, you guys, you know, shoulders, but it's heavy, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it should be.
Yeah.
Like if you're, you know, like if you're going to have any sort of responsibility at all, and any sort of, and anyone is going to be told, hey, you should listen to this person, then that person should respect that authority. And I think that is a big problem in our culture today, where people are put in a position of authority and they do not respect that position that they've been given. And they don't have this standard that they hold themselves to. And that leads us to a lot of problems. Yeah,
it does. You know, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Yeah. So what Bible dad acts like this, you know, does the Spider-Man way or really the Jesus way?
Well, when I think of Bible dads, I always think of Joseph. And
another Joseph person.
Right, which... I get frustrated because there's so little of Joseph in the Bible, but I just imagine how hard that must have been to be the father of the Savior. And but even like when we look at, you know, early in Jesus' story before Jesus was born and how Joseph treated Mary, he knows that Mary is with child, and he has every legal right to break off the engagement at that time, right? And he doesn't do that. He leads with grace, and he, you know, we see him trust God in that, and lead with grace and be gentle and kind and approach it the way that he did, which leads to all of our salvation, which is really cool to think about that's what a father had to do in order to, you know, bring about the Savior of the world. Yeah. And I think, and on that, I'll join in and talk a little bit about Joseph, is that how, even though he chose to stay with her, you know, there were rumors, you know, being said about, and the fact that he just stuck with her the whole time, like just, rode that out with her. Yeah, I told with all the rumors and all things, you know, were nasty things that were said, and that says a lot to me about his character. Yeah, we were in my Bible study group. We were reading through some of those passages recently, and I went down one of these rabbit holes, but for the most part, like Joseph would have been the one that took a lot of that, the brunt of those comments and those, that gossip that people, that people did, because he would have been the one that was out in the community and the one that he had a job. He was a carpenter. Yeah. He was providing for his family. He was interacting with a lot of other people. And so he would have been the one that was taking a lot of that brunt of those comments. And he knows that going into it, and he still chooses to be with her when he had every legal right at the time to not. And so just leading with that grace was such a step for him. And I think that was a great way for him to immediately prove his worthiness of being the earthly father of our Savior.
And just his faith too, that, hey, maybe there's something more to this. She says she heard from this angel character. Maybe there's something to it.
Yeah.
And that's his faith.
Yeah, it's cool.
A measure to his faith as well. So, yeah. All right. So in what ways do you guide your children to Christ? I know they're young, but what are the strategies, you guys are putting into place?
So I think the biggest thing is our lives just have to continually point back to God, and we have to be talking about God. We have to show what God is doing in our lives to our kids. So going back to mine and Rachel's parenting style of, like, we don't give children enough credit usually. Usually whatever you're thinking your child is capable of, they're probably capable of more. And so that applies to God too. And so whatever you're thinking that your child can understand about God and what you can talk to them about, they can probably take more than you think they can. Yeah. And so we read a lot with our children, and we let them, pick whatever they want to read. And we don't only read Christian books to them, but we do make sure that those are in the mix, so that we are constantly incorporating that. And we will often have conversations about those stories to just show that show our children that this is different than that. This is a relationship that we have with
it's
God.
Not just a fairy tale,
right? It's not. It's different than these other stories.
It's not
that we
long ago that happened. I mean, it was long ago, but
right.
These are true stories, and they still happen today.
That it's still something that we have a relationship with today. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Are there any specific scriptures that you guys try to teach them?
No, not yet. But I should probably take my own medicine here. And my children, my 3-year-old especially, is definitely at the age where she's capable of that. So we should probably start. So
or at least, I don't know. I think there's some small ones. I will say there was a sermon that Michael was our pastor at First West, and this might have been a few years ago, where he mentioned, I think it's Psalm 53:5. And I could have butchered the reference point for this one, but it's when I'm afraid, I will turn to you. I think that's that really small one. He shared that that's what he taught his sons, and I was like, oh, that's a good one, because it is short, and it's a good one to know. Yeah. And I might even butchered the whole thing. I don't know. So look in the show notes. I'll have the right thing there, but it's something like that. The truth is still in that. But yeah, and I just like to ask that question, because I kind of just want to know, do some people have a list prepared for when their kids do come, quote unquote, of age, or no, because I don't. I mean, my child can't even talk to me. So we learned the word out the other day, and I was ecstatic. So that's where I'm at. But I'm always just curious where people are, what the plan or non-plan is. So how does church fit into how you and Rachel parent?
So we rely heavily on our church, and we have a great church, and we rely heavily on surrounding ourselves with other believers who are in the same, stage of life, and who have kids, and who are raising their kids the same way we are. And we're lucky to go to a great church where we have a great life group where they make that easy, and they love on our children, and they teach our children about God, and don't just, babysit them when mom and dad need to step away or go to a big service on Sunday, but they're actually, you know, teaching our children about God. So we rely heavily on that. And I don't want to downplay the role that plays. It plays a huge role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you guys like have a time where you're like, hey, we're going to talk about church today, or we're going to talk about Jesus specifically? Is that something y'all do?
I feel like we're a lot like other families where, you know, immediately after church is the most natural time. So Sunday lunches where we will often ask, like, what did you learn at church today? And we'll all go around the table and say something. And so that's a natural point. And then other times, like when we read books, but a lot of times that we give our daughter the chance to pick what she's going to engage with. And so that can be hit or miss, but Sunday afternoons are kind of the most consistent.
So, like, what's like the wildest or most interesting thing Leah has ever said that she's learned from church?
So, recently she went on. We asked her what she learned about at church, and she went on. She very eloquently, for a 3-year-old, told us about how she, you know, learned about Jonah and the fish, and how God and Jesus saved him. And she was very specifically to point out right after that, she said, God and Jesus and their boys. And so she's very hung up on the gender of Jesus and God, which is interesting. But she has the most interesting takeaways as a 3-year-old. But it's good. It's always fun, and it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah. And their voice. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here for a little bit, and I just want to hear, like, what are your favorite things about your dad? Yeah,
my dad was a gentle giant. I'm like 5'6". My dad is like 6'2", 6'3".
Oh my gosh. Can't even imagine that.
I wish I had just cut the middle, you know, like if I had just gotten a few more inches, but my mom is like 5 foot even, and my dad is like 6'2". So he was always the gentle giant of our family. He was always willing to put himself second for the good of our family. Yeah. But he was also very passionate, and especially about like things that we were passionate about. Yeah. And so like my dad was always our biggest fan, and he was never like very pushy with sports or anything like that. Yeah. But as soon as we showed interest in something, he dove headfirst into that and wanted to know more about it, and was asking like genuinely good questions, and was at every event. And I genuinely believed as a kid that he was just as interested in everything I was interested in as I was. And he was either really good at that, at genuinely being interested, or he was really good at faking it. But either way, it worked. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome though, just to have that support, you know, knowing that you have that, like a true fan for you. That's awesome. You know, what are the top 3 things that he taught you?
So number 1, my father taught me to make a decision and accept the consequences. And that's a big one for me. Like, I believe in that myself, and it's like a core value of mine. And he didn't really allow for us to wallow or mope about things that didn't go our way. He was a constant reminder that, you know, in most situations things are going to be okay, and we need to make the right choice. But the most important thing is make a choice and live with it. Yeah. And deal with the consequences. And especially if you make the wrong choice, deal with the consequences and accept those consequences. So that's a big one. He taught me to always put other people first. So my dad is a much more like joyful servant than I am. And he always led, I'm just being honest. He always led by example, and is always willing to, you know, inconvenience himself so that others aren't inconvenienced. And I always really respected that about him. And then lastly, he just taught me about the importance of a steady consistent relationship with Christ. I mean, he met my mom serving in the church as an organ player. He has been in the choir and been a Sunday school teacher for 40 plus years.
Wow.
And that constant relationship, like unwavering throughout my entire life, has had such an impact on me. And so, yeah, I learned a lot through that.
Was there is there like a special moment you're like, man, that's really unwavering, or it's just the sum total of it? You know, it sticks out.
Yeah, I think the one that sticks out to me is when my grandmother, his mother, died, and all our family had gathered for the funeral, and you know, like this is his mom, and like we're all clearly grieving, and just in that moment when we were finally like all in the same room, he just took charge and was like, we're going to pray now. And he like that prayer that he gave was just so powerful in that moment, and so filled with wisdom, and just, you know, in a moment where we were all like really hurting, he just had the right words to say. And because that, you know, relationship with God was there. And it's genuine, you know?
Yeah. You know, now that like, I guess I'm more of an adult because I'm in my 30s now, I see that and value that more, because sometimes I catch myself, I don't know, it's just like to be the one to make that move, to say, hey guys, we're going to pray like that. I don't know. Sometimes I catch myself like, I don't know if I would say it. Like, I don't know if I, you know, be paralyzed with like the moment, you know? So people who are able to do that, that is something that it's a bigger deal. Whereas as a younger person, I would wait to lean into the other person that does it first. Or I would feel like, oh, well, someone else is going to do that. And I feel comfortable with them doing it.
Yeah.
But now that it's like, I'm of the age, or maybe I just realize it more now, like, no, that it could be me.
Right.
That does that. And I'm realizing, oh, I don't know if I would.
Well, and especially for our fathers out there, like that was what was so impactful, is that like we go back to how God defines our role as a father. It's to be that leader. And like for my dad in that moment, in a moment where he's dealing with stuff too, right? But to take the reins and be like, I'm going to lead our family in prayer right now when we need it. It made me respect him as a father, and gave me an example of, oh, that's how you behave like a Christ follower, a Christ-like father in that moment. Yeah.
You know, I have a similar, I guess, moment for myself. It wasn't in tragedy, but it was in the real world. You know, I played travel ball growing up, and so 13 to 14, that was a big part of my life. A highlight moment, I think, for most of us. Maybe not my brother, but that's another story for another day. He was kind of like my caddy. But that's really for me where my faith exploded, and it's because of my dad, because he would take it upon, he was leading our family by saying like, hey, when the rest of the team is like chilling by the pool, we were out looking for a church that we're going to go find to worship at. You know, is it the 8 a.m. service or not? And, you know, we didn't have to do that. And then when we didn't or couldn't find one, you know, he would be the one leading it in our hotel room. Yeah. And just that point of making it that we are going to acknowledge the Lord on Sunday, no matter where we're at. And for me, that made it more real. You know, it's not just we get dressed up to go do on this certain day. Like, no, this is real, and then we do it because the Lord is worthy of that. And eventually it led to like, we started having church at the ball field. It really became like evangelistic. And even that, it's like, oh, wow. So, I mean, it could be a whole nother podcast. I could go on and on. But for me, I'm with you. Like when you see your father step in a role when they don't have to, that's when it speaks the most. So, wow. Thanks for sharing that for your story. Because we're on to be mom and dad. So for you, though, what are parts of fatherhood that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's watching my kids discover and learn new things, especially when it's on their own or without much help from me, which all goes back to sort of our parenting style. But I just love that. Like when we are able to create an environment where they're able to learn, and then they do learn something, you see something click organically with them, that is where I get the most joy. And I have young kids, so watching them learn is incredible. Like, you can sit them down in an empty room and just watch them for 10 minutes and they'll learn something, and it's amazing. They really are like sponges, and it's just awesome. So that's by far my favorite.
I think this time of our lives is pretty great as parents, because their joy, because when they experience that new thing or learn that new thing, it's just pure joy, and we get to be a part of that. Like, their joy is our joy,
right?
Kind of thing. I literally gave Asher an empty Amazon box yesterday just to see what you do with it.
It's the best toy, an empty box.
He was just destroying it and like pushing it around, and I don't know. And I loved watching it. I didn't care. Yeah, we're making a mess, but I could care less, because it's just like he's figuring out this box,
right?
What he can do with it, and he's loving it, and I loved it for it, for him. So yeah, I feel that. All right, and what are some things that you want your girls to know? When they get ready to be on their own, like, what are some things you hope that they get from you?
So I want them to know that they're loved, for one. So again, going back to what I think my role as a father is, I want them to feel safe and that they feel loved. And then I want them to love other people. So like the second one would be, I want them to treat other people with genuine kindness and empathy out of love. And so I tell my daughters all the time that I love them. Like, anytime it crosses my mind, no matter where we are, what we're doing, every single night, like I sneak back into their room after they're asleep to tell them. And so, so that's a big one. And we also teach them that because we involve them, right? So we show them how you care for other people. So when Rachel and I, bring something to a family that is just had a baby, right? We will let Leah sort of participate. So she will get to pick what we make them, or she will get to make a card for them or draw a card for them or whatever. And we explain that to them, again, going back to that idea that like they're capable of more than you think. And so just have that, be willing to have that conversation about the reason we're doing this is because we care for people, and that's important for us. And we try to do that. We're not perfect. We don't do it all the time. But I want her to feel loved and to be able to show that love to other people. Yeah. So,
man, that's good stuff, man. And I feel like that's straight from the gospel, or like what God commands us in general to
hope
be,
so. Yeah.
But really, like, he tells us to love him and to love others.
Right.
So like, so bravo. I think your goals align with that.
Yeah.
Gold star for you on the Christians meter. Yeah, but I think but seriously, that's really great, and I think that's awesome. And I think just the way you guys are going about it sounds pretty great, pretty awesome. So what, do you have any advice to give for a dad that's in a stage below you?
Hang on. It's a wild ride. And then don't be too hard on yourself as a parent. I said it at the top, but be willing to admit that you're wrong. Be willing to admit that you're capable of being wrong and doing the wrong thing. And then don't give yourself grace so that you can show grace to your kids. If you can't show yourself grace, like, you're not gonna be able to practice it with other people either. So be willing to admit your mistakes and own up to them, and then give your kids space to try new things and make mistakes, and show them grace when they do make mistakes.
That's some good advice there. All right. The last and my favorite question, what is your favorite memory you have so far with each of your girls?
So we recently went to Disney, and we went at the perfect time, because my 3-year-old is just like you said, just everything is, she approaches everything with so much joy. And being in a place like that, she was joy everywhere, and she was just overwhelmed. And so the first night we were there, she's dressed up in her princess gown, and she's got the whole 9 yards. She's had the best day, and we're ending the day with fireworks, right? And the fireworks start, and I'm holding her up in the air, and as each firework is going off, it's just more and more amazement. And you know, the music is going off, and she's telling me like, "Daddy, we listened to this song," and then at one point the fireworks are getting to the finale, and she just says, "Wow, look at all the magic." And like everyone around us was just like, "Oh, it's so sweet." Yeah. They were all watching her too. So that's my favorite moment, just with Leah, because she was just so much joy in that moment. And that, just as a dad, that's what you want to see from your kids, right?
Yeah.
And then with my 11-month-old Caroline, she's pretty little right now. She just started walking, but my favorite thing she's doing right now is she hugs on command. And so you can like wake her up in the morning and you just say hugs, and she will put her head on your shoulder and give you a little hug, and she'll even like sort of mouth "aw."
That is so super sweet. I wish Asher would do that. Right now he only does that when he's scared, and I like that he's holding on to me, but I don't like that you're scared. Right. So yeah, I felt that for sure. Well, Spencer, I've enjoyed having you out this evening. You know, you've given me a fresh perspective on discipline and a whole lot to chew on. So like it was good. This was good.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So setting wide boundaries and respecting your children as people, such a simple idea, but such a radical, and different viewpoint for our society, what they should have, I think. So just an encouraging word. Thank you for sharing, Spencer.
My name is Spencer, and this is my story of the middle.
This is your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast.
Psalm 40, verse 2. He brought me up from a desolate pit out of the muddy clay and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure.